The massive market sell-off over COVID started just around a year ago. This is when investors really started to panic about the potential impact of the pandemic and what that would mean, not only for the markets, but of course, for the economy as well. We want to bring in Yahoo Finance editor-in-chief, Andy Serwer, to help us take a look back at some of the lessons that we've learned over the past year. And Andy, we had that massive sell-off, and then of course it was followed by the fastest recovery that we've ever seen on record. I'm curious though to get your thoughts as we do look back over the last 12 months, just a couple of things that stick out to you and some of those lessons that we have learned.
Yeah, that's right, Sean. I mean, we really have taken a turn around the sun because right now, this week, and especially tomorrow, is going to really mark the day that the pandemic really began, or at least it began in the United States, or at least it began to really take a hold of our consciousness and we really started to become aware of it. Was kind of the shutdown day. I think when we look back on this year, it will make a lot of sense in terms of what happened with the economy and the stock market. I mean, there was this, as you said, this huge sell-off and then the snapback because we realized it wasn't the end of the world. But then there was the stay-at-home trade because the companies and the parts of the economy that did best benefited from work from home. And of course, that was the FANGs and then the second-tier techs and the Pelotons and the Etsy's. And now, as we start to get back to work and the vaccine is being widely distributed, we're seeing a changeover, this rotation trade that we've been talking about for the past several weeks, which is, of course, generating a sell-off of the techs, particularly the second-tier techs, and a rotation into cyclical stocks. And, 2 years from now, we'll look back and say, oh, this all just made perfect sense. When we're in the throes of it, it's gut-wrenching, it's mind-blowing, it's crazy. We've never been here before. But if you think about it, it actually does make sense.
Andy, when you talk about being in the throes of it, I remember going into this, you did an interview with Warren Buffett where he said he was holding on to his airline stocks. He wouldn't sell them. Then about a month later, he did. And then it was 365 days ago. You were with him as we hit really the lockdown. What was that like?
Absolutely, Adam. I mean, it was March 10th of 2020, and I was sitting in his office in Omaha, which is kind of unthinkable at this point still, doing an interview with him. And remember, the day before last year was the big sell-off where the circuit breakers kicked in and the Dow was down 2,000 points. And we flew out there and we were a little sort of wary, like, wow, I guess, there's this pandemic, but we're traveling. There wasn't really any talk of testing. There was no widespread testing. We didn't particularly wear masks. Buffett walked out and just came right out and shook our hands. We were a little concerned about that and sat right down with me. And the first question I asked him, Adam, was, the market's down 2,000 points, Warren Buffett. What the heck is going on? And he, gave one of his famous Buffettisms where he said, if you live long enough, you'll see everything in markets. And this is just another episode. But the idea of after that, I remember thinking, yikes, what if we had given Warren Buffett COVID? It's just sort of scary, right? The whole thing.
It certainly was very, very scary. And going back to those days a year ago, Andy, I remember you and I having a conversation that day when we knew that we were going to be working from home, and you and I had a bet, and you said that we wouldn't be back to the office until at least May, and I thought you were crazy. I thought that would be way too long, and here we are 12 months later, and we're all still working from home. All right, Andy Serwer, Yahoo Finance editor-in-chief, as always, thanks so much for jumping on with us.